In this class, I am going to explore the notion of interaction in class, that is, level of scaffolding 3. What does interaction in class consist of? What are we talking about when we refer to the moment-to-moment interaction? To talk about the scaffolding done through interaction in class, it is necessary to distinguish input from output so as to understand how they relate in the context of a language class. I will first define input in teaching terms, and I will describe different kinds of input that are used to support language learning in class. Then, I will define and explain what output is and its impact in language acquisition. Finally, I will refer to the ways in which teaching strategies articulate input and output in an English class. Let me begin by describing once again the concept of scaffolding. As we said in previous classes, scaffolding 3 can be defined as the moment-to-moment interaction that is structured to facilitate language acquisition. That is, we are referring to the negotiation of meanings through language use that is devised by teachers so as to support students in linguistic development. The moment-to-moment classroom interaction is characterized by containing instances of input and output. Input can be defined as the language available in the context of learning from diverse sources, that is, the language coming from the teacher, classmates, and oral, written, or multimedia texts. Conversely, output is defined as the language produced by the learner when speaking or writing while negotiating meanings. It is the result of processes of actual language use evidenced through oral or written texts. Let us begin our analysis focusing on input. In teaching terms, input can be divided into two categories. On the one hand, there is the input that is going to be used in class for passive recognition. That is, students are expected to understand that language but not produce it yet. It is the language for future active use and output, what I call foot out. We should expect students to understand what is being said or what is being read, but we don't expect them to process the language in such a way that they will be able to produce it in the immediate present. It is the language that they will have to learn in the near future. In contrast, input for active use is described as the language that students are expected to understand and produce in the context of that class. That is, the language that will be immediately used through output. This is what I call IM-out. Let us analyze this classroom extract. Try to identify the input you think is for active use and the one you think is for passive recognition.
Hello. Okay, now we're going to do a little story, okay? Now, you do it with me, okay? You do it with me. Now, say hello to your mom. Hello. Say hello to your mom. Hello. You are hungry.
A TPR sequence is demonstrated. The children listen and do the movements accordingly. The sentences are repeated several times. In the beginning, it's important to maintain the order. The children learn to understand the meaning of the sentences with the help of mimes, gestures, and drawings on the board. Doing the movements themselves is an important memory aid.
Show the plum to your mom. Your mom says,
Soon, the children can make the movements on their own and in a different order.
say hello to your mom. Your mom says, eek. Say hello to your mom. Your mom shows you some plums. Your mom says eek. Eek. Okay? Say hello to your mom. You are hungry. Your mom shows you some plums. Cut open a plum. Show the plum to your mom. Yes. Your mom says, eat. Very good. Okay, you listen to the CD and you write the numbers. Here we go.
Say hello to your mom.
Hello.
It's 1.
2. You're hungry.
The children listen to the sentences from the CD. They write the numbers by the pictures in their book. Afterwards, they compare their results.
And here?
6.
6. And the last number here?
2.
2. Yes.
You certainly have noticed that we are constantly exposing students to input that contains a high proportion of language for active use and a low proportion of language for passive recognition. Also, you noticed in all instances of classroom interaction there will be both types of input. This is done to ensure an adequate level of challenge in the language students encounter, while at the same time the language is comprehensible enough for students not to get discouraged and to be able to follow the teaching sequence. So what is the peculiarity of input in class? Input requires to be at what Construccion calls I+1 level of difficulty. By this, Construccion refers to an adequate level of challenge that would make it possible for students, on the one hand, to follow and understand, but yet recognize new items which meaning and use they will still have to process. Some of these items students will know they will have to use in the class. Others, they will know that they need to understand but not to use in the class. Also, there should be a clear communicative context of use when input is provided. As students listen or read, they should be able to understand the communicative value of what is being said through a well-developed contextual frame. Finally, input should contain a redundancy of linguistic items to be noted for active use. This redundancy, as we mentioned in some other classes, will operate as a strategy to linguistically show students how the items are used and their communicative values. This insistence on certain linguistic items will help students notice what they should be able to understand for immediate use in the task in class. Look at this extract of a lesson for children. As you watch, keep these questions in mind. Is the lesson at an adequate level of challenge, I+1? Is there a clear communicative context of use? Are linguistic items made redundant to help noticing?
Right, shall we see who's in our sack this morning?
The children in Anne's class at Parque de Lisboa school are very young. Most are just 3 years old. They spend 3 sessions a week learning English, and all of their other lessons are taught in Spanish.
His paw. And his foot. And his little tail. Wow. Hello.
Hello, Floppy.
Let's say hello to Floppy. Everyone. Hello, Floppy.
Over the past year, the children have become familiar with the Oxford Reading Tree characters and are now able to say very simple English words.
Everybody.
All of Anne's teaching is conducted in English, though sometimes the children respond in their native tongue. This is not a problem with children of this age, as it shows they have understood the question.
Is that Kipper? No. Who is it? Dad. Let's put Dad back up here with Mum and the children. Alvaro, come and see. See if you can find Kipper. See if he's in the sack. Is this Kipper? Yes, it's Kipper. Let's put Kipper back up here with the family. Sit down, Alvaro. Good boy. Now, is Floppy happy? Yes, he's happy because Kipper is back and Dad is back. I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy all day long. Everybody, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy all day long. Ah ha ha ha, ah he he, ah ha ha ha. Ah hee hee hee, ah ha ha ha, ah hee hee hee. I'm happy all day long. Floppy's very happy. Now we're going to have a story. A story. And in our story is Kipper and Dad and Mum.
As you could see, the lesson is at an excellent level of challenge. It is totally adequate, and this is realized by the fact that the teacher carefully chooses what she is going to say, using the language that students already know, but also introducing new items in a very clear communicative context of use. It is very clear what the teacher is saying. And note that children can even anticipate in Spanish, their mother tongue, what she is saying in English. Note as well that she repeats several times the same items so as to generate an awareness on the new linguistic items that are to be learned during the class.